be transmitted. Ok?
Professora tem que baixar o som, está bem? Tem que baixar o som do YouTube do telemóvel, porque vai ter um atraso.
Claro, tem que tirar o som, senão interfere, exato, não é?
Vai ter um atraso de 20 segundos, provavelmente.
Mas já estamos a transmitir.
Já começaste, João? Ok.
Eu já vejo aqui no telemóvel, exatamente. Pronto, então penso que podemos começar, não é? Bom dia a todos. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the second plenary session of the International Conference on Smart, Sustainable, Social and Accessible Tourism. This second plenary session has as main topic accessibility and technology for more inclusive tourism, and as invited speakers, Bodil Blischfeld, Trinidad Domingos Villa, and Maria João Carneiro. The session will start with the presentation by Bodil Blischfeld called Dementia-Friendly Tourism. Bodil is Associate Professor at the University of Southern Denmark, and she has a long work in these topics related with the conference, including research on healthy aging with nature, discursive representations of older adults, intergenerational family relations in a holiday perspective, and tourism for people with disabilities. Bodil has extensively published in topics related with this, the topic of our conference, and you can see all or lots of her publications in the program of the conference. Of course, I'm not going to say all the titles of the papers here, but you can see it in the short biography on the conference of short biography of Bodil in the conferences program. So Bodil, when you are ready, you can share with us your presentation.
Yes.
And thank you very much to all of you, of course, to be here. We are very honored to have all of you here, and it is a pleasure for us that you are here.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. This is a most interesting topic and one that I really feel deeply about. I hope you can see my screen. Yes. So I'm going to talk about dementia-friendly tourism because I've started looking at this topic recently and find that that might be the next step in accessible tourism to go into issues like this. And I've gone into that topic together with some colleagues of mine. So much of the work has been done with Christoph Tomei and Marcus Hansen. It's always good to work with the younger people who have these fresh perspectives. Now, why accessible tourism matters? And I've put in a few numbers. I'm not going through all of them, but we definitely see a world where we are aging. We live longer, and that means that society is aging. And even though, and we've done some research on that we generally live more active and healthy lives, and especially focus on active and healthy aging, age-related disabilities will increase as society is aging. And that also means that with aging, more often we see complex medical conditions. So that means that matters of accessibility becomes this complex web of different disabilities of the individual. Now, as society is aging, that also means that the topic of this conference is a really hot topic, because accessible tourism is no longer a niche market. It is something that destinations and tourism actors across the world need to take into consideration and need to accommodate to in the future. Now, in the Western world, in the more affluent societies, tourism is recognized as a human right. So there's much talk about our right to traveling, a right that was truly disturbed by COVID-19 and the implications hereof, because we've had this idea that our annual holidays, and not just one, is something that is just an integral part of our lives. But the aging society increases the complexibilities in what accessibility is. And that is why we've started to look into dementia and dementia-friendly tourism, which is one of those topics that has not gotten that much attention yet. Now, a short recap of my journey into disability tourism research. I started, as many others, being very excited when the social turn came in tourism. So we no longer looked at the individual traveler, but took an interest in the groups we actually travel in. That led to a series of specializations. So I did work on children, on tweens, that's the ones in between childhood and being teenagers. Moved on to special kinds of families, like gay families, 3-generational families. That's something we've seen a lot, where it's not a nuclear family, but it's 3 generations traveling together, or perhaps even the oldest and the youngest generation. Looked into mancationing, when men go on holidays without women being present, and womancationing, and also staycationing. While doing that, I also started taking an interest in disabilities tourism, both looking at the supply and the demand side. And recently, in line with the aging society, I've looked into older adults and active aging, and that led to a natural interest in dementia-friendly tourism, and I'll come back to why that was. So at the moment, we have joined in a team that are going to look into dementia-friendly tourism. We've started doing small pieces of research that I'll introduce. So that means if you have an interest in dementia-friendly tourism, don't hesitate to contact us. The more the merrier, and the more knowledge we can gain. But the purpose of the team is we have an overriding aim and wish to improve dementia friendliness of destinations. We also wish to improve awareness and training education in regard to dementia within both tourism scholarship and industry. And then you might wonder, but now, why this interest in dementia, and why this interest in dementia-friendly tourism? Well, if we look at one of the traditional definitions of accessible tourism, it's the one by Buhalis and Darcy. I think you have all probably seen that before, because accessible tourism is all about enabling people with access requirements, including mobility, hearing, and cognitive dimensions of access, to function independently and with equity, and through the delivery of universally designed tourism products, services, and environments. But if we look at that definition, as disabilities tourism research and accessibility studies have matured, like all other branches of research, specialization increases, as it should. That also means, I would argue, we have passed the days where disability friendliness was defined predominantly as physical accessibility. And the interest in dementia-friendly tourism is very much related to our recognition of cognitive disabilities being the least studied area of accessible tourism. Now, if we look into what dementia is, it is an umbrella term for various diseases and conditions that progressively affect our cognitive abilities, perceptions, and behaviors, as well as our ability to perform everyday tasks. It is a disorder causing irreversible loss of neurons and brain functions. It's not a natural part of the aging process, nor is it a disease, but it is a syndrome related to a continuous decline in brain functioning, which leads to various disabilities. A very critical issue about dementia is that it is a hidden disability, so that many might not realize that we have tourists visiting with dementia. Of course, most of you have probably heard about Alzheimer's, and that is the most common type of dementia, but there are lots of other types, and what we can and cannot do with dementia differs tremendously across people. Dementia-friendly tourism is an important issue because there are some issues with dementia that are different from other types of accessibility barriers. One is the urgency. Even if dementia is less aggressive, someday, and often sooner than expected, traveling will become impossible, or at least the benefits of engaging in tourism will be much lower, than the costs. That means that we will often see, for example, that people might have a bucket list where it's important to go traveling before it's too late. People with dementia travel with family and significant others. And as the literature indicates, a lot of the research has done looking into the problems that family members and significant others encounter as they go on holidays together with beloved ones having dementia. As said before, it's also a hidden disability. And where some age-induced disabilities are static once they happen, or can be bettered by training, this is not the case for dementia. Now, in the early stages of dementia, people may still travel. Some might even intensify travel to do the trips they've always dreamed about, the bucket list. But unfamiliar places and spaces might be confusing, and tasks that we consider quite simple, such as making a payment, remember one's room number in the hotel, finding one's way through the city or back to the hotel, might be a lot more difficult than it's been previously. So that means that living with dementia, even in the first stages, often means struggling with memory loss, mobility issues, decreased visual perception, spatial awareness problems, difficulties interacting with places and spaces and others, and relying a lot more on significant others than previously. And all of these issues increase when we are in unfamiliar places. So taking on the role as a tourist becomes increasingly difficult. And in the later stages of dementia, travel is often not possible. So those are the reasons why we consider dementia-friendly tourism to be something that it is definitely time that we do more research on. And I'll give you 3 examples of our very first steps into the unknowns of this research topic. Our first piece of research, that is one Marcus is mostly in charge of, is about developing dementia-friendly destinations. And it is a case study in the US. As much as the research, it was originally scheduled for the spring 2020, but it's postponed due to COVID. We really hope that it will be done next year. But it is a survey with 4,000 DMOs in the US, and the aim is to explore dementia-friendly readiness. So at the moment, there's been interviews with DMOs in Naples and New Smyrna Beach. And the next step is the big survey. The next example is our work on understanding the travel information needs. Because although leisure and travel can be beneficial for the well-being of both people with dementia and their informal carers and beloved ones, existing travel-related information is not that sufficient for their needs. The information needs in this context remain rather unexplored. So in this stream of research, we are turning to ethnography, so ethnography on the internet, to uncover the construction of meaning of travel for people with dementia and their carers and beloved ones, as well as the related information needs in various online communities. Now, the last example is the piece of research that we have come the farthest with. As you can see, there are some pictures here indicating that it takes place in nature, and it is in nature in Denmark, sometimes rather cold. It is part of a project called Innovating Active Healthy Aging with World-Class Nature. And the aim of that research is to promote and understand, of course, active healthy aging with nature in order to keep older adults, we define that as 55 plus, and nature in good health. A key element of that research is that whereas much research relies on static and immobile research methods, like the traditional interview or focus group, we wish to use mobile, participatory, and collaborative methodologies and methods. So that means that we actually did go-alongs, both with residents, tourists, and second home owners who are in between being residents and tourists. So I'll give you some examples of our methods. As much of my research, that research is based on relativistic ontologies and subjective epistemologies, and the aim is really to capture the variations of interpretation of aging with nature across older adults. So we did different types of interventions, the go-alongs and hybrids of mobile participant observations and interviews. And the key idea was that we did not only want to talk with our research participants, we really wanted to walk the walk of their lives. So there were 3 main activities and also some smaller ones. So the main activity was 14 sessions with 19 residents lasting 5 to 8 hours, where we both walked with them in nature and did interview sessions. The second one was 10 half-day nature-based activities, interviews, and co-design workshops with older male residents. And then we also did, I didn't write that here, but of course we also, this is tourism, so we also did go-alongs with tourists. And then we participated in a wealth of activities that qualified as smaller pieces of research. And we also, for example, asked the tourists to send us pictures of their engagements with tourism. Now, I'm not going through all of our results, but only the ones that are crucial for this conference. So, not that surprising, older adults do active and healthy aging. It is an issue that matters a lot to them. They are aware of the issue that it is important to be active and healthy as you age. And they define these active and healthy activities both as activities for the body and activities for the mind. So it's not only about being physical active, it is also about activating your mind and do things that allow you to use your cognitive structures. Now, the reason why we do this as we age is simply that we want to live long and meaningful lives. And we do not want to be a burden as we age. The thing about being independent is a big part of the reason why people want to stay active and healthy. Most of our research participants talked about how they dread the day when their bodily or physical abilities are no longer as they were. So they really dread the day when bodily or physical disabilities prevent them from being active. Many of them had smaller accidents or smaller things like their hearing decreasing, vision decreasing. Some had, for example, had problems with a hip, but all of these things were things where you can train for some of them. So if, for example, it's a hip, you can try to retrain so that you can go back to being active. And with hearing and vision impairments, there are all kinds of technologies that allow us to deal with these issues, at least to a certain degree. But, and that is one of the key reasons why we really wanted to dig into the topic of dementia-friendly tourism, is that the thing the research participants fear the most, much more than breaking a hip, is dementia. That is really that one thing they dread will happen to them, and that will impair them from being active and healthy and going on holidays and being active and healthy through them. That means at the moment we are looking into the key challenges there are when studying dementia-friendly tourism, because it is a difficult topic to dwell into. Of course, the first and most obvious, perhaps, challenge is the issue of giving voice to those who may be impaired from giving voice. It is so difficult to actually give them voice. So lots of research rely on spouses and significant others and beloved ones and what they have to tell about dementia. And we would love if we could go one step further than that and not only give voice to the significant others. One issue could, of course, be to rely more on ethnography. So actually to be able to lurk a bit on the interactions and communication that goes on when people try to deal with a life with dementia and traveling. But of course, as always, that poses that problem with the difference between the lives we post and share publicly and then the lives we actually live. And then the biggest challenge of them all with this topic is, of course, the sensitivity of the topic and those ethical considerations that you need to include in it. As a qualitative researcher, I've had an easy time with a lot of the research I've done, because going along with people or doing an interview with people is not something that is harmful at the outset. But when we go into issues such as dementia, then the sensitivity of it definitely makes it questionable whether we as researchers might harm people just by being researchers and listening to and talking to them. And I know this is a topic that is a bit sad, but I really, really think that it is time that we increase the research we do into cognitive disabilities. And as society is aging, dementia will be an increasing part of our lives. So traveling and being a tourist with dementia or with beloved ones with dementia will definitely be an issue that we need to dig deep into in future. And that said, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Bodil, for your very interesting presentation in a hidden topic, about the hidden disability, as you said. I'm sure that by the end of our session, many questions and many comments will pop up. So thank you very much again. And we will now we'll have our second invited talk by Trinidad Dominguez Villa. Not sure if I said your name correctly. I hope so. And Trinidad, thank you very much for being with us as well. And Trinidad is going to, the title of her presentation is, Can You Access Accessibility of the Tourism Official Websites? Trinidad, as you can see in the program of the conference, she holds a degree in Business Administration and Management, and a master in tourism management and planning, and a PhD in business management and in business management. Sorry, and she obtained the cum laude qualification, as well as the extraordinary PhD award for the work titled "Tourism Marketing for People with Disabilities: The Accessible Tourism Product." Trinidad is assistant professor of the Department of Business Organization and Marketing from the University of Vigo. She teaches a number of courses related with tourism and cooperates with with different universities nationally and internationally. And she has also published extensively in this field of accessible tourism. And I would like to invite Trinidad to share with us her thoughts and their knowledge. And the stage is yours whenever you were ready. Thank you very much.
Yes? Okay. Primeiro, gostaria eu estou muito obrigada pelo convite. Bom dia para todos. I would like to thank to the organization committee for the invitation. It is a pleasure for me to stay here with a computer, but to stay here. My research interests are focused on social tourism, main tourism for people with disability and senior tourism, and the electronic tourism. With the meta search and accessibility web structures. Okay. Today, I want to speak about the tourism nowadays, online world, e-tourism, accessibility, and beneficiaries of accessibility with the senior, accessible, and social tourism, to end by focusing on official tourism website accessibility. Tourism nowadays, the emergence of COVID in late 2019 had transformed the lives of people around the world. This is one example of them. According to the information available around mid-year of this year, more than 188 million people have been infected, more than 37 million of people have been vaccinated, and more than 2% have died. The economic and social repercussions of this pandemic are innumerable, but one of the sectors with most problem is the tourism industry. The World Tourism Organization estimates that in 2020, the number of international tourists fell by 98%, with a year-on-year decrease of 56% and a financial loss 3 times higher than those generated in the 29 crisis. The pandemic has completely changed we used to live, change our lifestyle, normalizing social distance, limiting travel, as well as social and working meetings. In turn, they have already had a major impact on different economies in all industries and sectors worldwide. The only exception are these economic activities that have been able to adapt to the digital media for their survival. Tourism is one of the sectors where its effect has been most noticeable. It's very difficult to adapt the tourism activity to the online media. The different infection spikes that have been identified in the so-called waves are always accompanied by government measures at the local, state, or community levels, which delimit leisure time and activities in relation to it. Some sections of the tourism industry, including airlines, hospitality, sporting events, restaurants, and cruises, will surely be greatly affected by the pandemic in immediate terms. The digitalization of the customer-company relationship does not stop growing, and after the effect of the COVID, this trend has been amplified with a clear increase in data traffic and in the live purchase of consumer goods. Some data about this important chain is the increase in traffic worldwide since the beginnings of the pandemic has between 13 and almost 30%, and has almost doubled in most countries in relation to the use of data, increasing the average online purchase of consumer goods around $500 US. In 2020, 38% of internet users use the networks to search for websites in relation to the tourist destination, travel, and vacations. Change traditional purchasing model to promote a consumer as a multi-channel consumer. We use now webs, mobile, social networks, points of sales, delivery points, emails, a lot of things when we purchase something. But there are a problem. Not all people can access to the internet information. It can be clearly seen that there is a discrimination. One of the main barriers encountered by people with disabilities when they travel is in relation to the search and the access to the information. For this reason, family, friends, and associations continues to be the main source of information. The use of internet has considerable grown, and it has gained an increasing significant presence, mainly with groups who have physical and highly disabilities. United Nations have recognized the importance to access to the internet and communication technology, with special emphasis on broadband networks and service. Considering that websites are among the major promotional tool and source of information when selecting a destination worldwide, and that according to the various studies, the internet is positioned as the leading communication medium regarding destination, access to online tourist information by people with disability is a research field of great social importance. For this reason, this communication seeks to analyze the accessibility of official tourist websites and their current situation in relation to the accessibility level of their content. There is no point in having information about accessibility of tourist products and services, because it cannot be consulted by the user with disabilities. For this communication, we use 3 different research that see here. And 2020 is the title of the paper, Accessibility of Tourist Website, the Level of Country Commitment. In 2019 is the Accessibility Tourism Online and North European Perspective. And the last is in 2018, website accessibility in the tourism industry and analysis of official national organization websites around the world. The data of this paper was available in 2016 and 2017, but has been reviewed and updated in September of this year with the objective to analyze if the different countries have been working to improve their official tourist websites. When you are planning a research, one of the main steps is define clearly the concept of research. The concept of accessibility also entails social and technical dimension. The social dimension involves a person's right to freedom from discrimination, which requires the technical dimension, as reflected on infrastructures that guarantees the means to enjoy equal rights. As a result, a sub-dimension of accessibility is the ability to access information and service by minimizing the barriers of distance and cost, as well as the usability of the interface. In terms of website accessibility, website design should allow people with disabilities to perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the websites, as well as to upload contents. This is very important because there are a lot of beneficiaries of these actions. It's estimated that over 15% of the world population lives with a disability. This percentage will tend to increase in the medium and long term, which will lead to a shift from 1 billion people to 1.2 billion in 2050. According with the World Health Organization, there is a clear relationship between disability and aging, with the 35% of people over 65 that are living with some type of disability. For this reason, seniors are very important as beneficiaries of accessibility. Nowadays represents around 11% of world population, but will be the double in 2050. On the basis of this data, elderly people and people with disabilities, both direct beneficiaries of accessibility, as well as explicitly religious groups, account for more than 1/5 of the world population. Okay, it's obvious that not all people are able to travel, either because of impairments like it with the disability for economics or for social reasons. In contrast, other groups are potential beneficiaries of the accessibility. For instance, pregnant women, people with transitory physical disabilities, or maybe families with children. Darcy and Dyson estimate that the direct beneficiaries beneficiaries of accessibility could represent around 31% of the total demand. But offering accessible tourist products, service, and environment gives rise to a number of competitive advantages, as accessibility is a quality indicator based on compliance with a series of standards that facilitate their use and enjoyment by others. When you go to a hotel, what do you prefer? A big bedroom or a small bedroom? A big room or a small room? Everybody prefers a big. This is the standards of accessibility. But the problem is that not all people with disabilities have the same needs. And as they are not a homogeneous group, different types of disability requires a wide range of assistive technologies. Here, you can see different examples: voice recognition programs or braille synthesizers. However, some people with disabilities still don't know to trust the information on websites because they believe that it's insufficient or unreliable. Taking into account the speed at which information and communication technologies change, an increasing number of barriers are in the process of being eliminated. The technology is very relevant nowadays. Between 2015 and 2030, we will to pass of 15,000 to 500,000 million of connected devices. Information can be adapted to people with disability more quickly and at a lower cost. 98% of the world's top 1 million websites don't offer full accessibility. And then legislation is slow, unified, and without sanctions. As a result of all of them, we have that, basing on the data of a web AEM study of 2020, only 2% of the world's top 1 million websites offer full accessibility. 60% of the screen readers users feel that web content accessibility is getting worse. 71% of the websites visitors with disability will leave a website that is not accessible. One study found that more than 800,000 WCAG compliance issues among Fortune 100 companies. The WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That is a tool that uses the World Wide Web Consortium that works to improve the web accessibilities. These guidelines use 4 different things, that is the principles with 4 types, that perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Then they have guidelines that provide the basic goals. Then have a success criteria, that is a stable success criteria, the level A, that is the lowest, double A, and triple A, that is the highest. And finally, sufficient and adversarial techniques. For this research, we use a tool TAU is a web tool to analyze and obtain information on the degree of accessibility of other websites based on WCAG guidelines. The results are showing like this, with 3 main blocks. The first is the problems, corrections are needed, this web need corrections. The second is warnings, which require human reviews, and the last is no reviews, that requires a full human reviews. All of them are classified in perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. As an example, perceivables have the text alternatives, the time-based media, or the editable or distinguishable. For this study, the official tourism websites of the countries listed in the 2016 World Tourism Organization annual report was used, and the total sample of the 216 official tourism websites was 188, and this is the map that represents of the different levels of all the countries in the world. But we try to explain that. To try to classify all this information, we use the cluster analysis for 2 different levels, the level of conformase AA and the level of conformase AAA. The level of conformase A was eliminated because it's compulsory in a lot of countries. For the level AA, the first cluster is one of the most numerous, with 39 cases, and was characterized by having the highest number of problems, with 76 warnings. The cluster 2 is the highest, with 134 countries, and had the lowest number of problems per criterion, with 8, and the lowest number of warnings. This was the opposite for the cluster 3, with 14 cases, in which the number of problems for the success criteria was quite high in relation with the cluster 2 and 4. And cluster 4 was a particular remarkable, is Bangladesh, and it was one with the less number of problems for the success criterion, only 6, but one with the highest number of warnings, 362. For the level AAA, are very similar to the level 2, but with a few differences. The case of the cluster 2 is similar to the cluster 4. The same happened with the cluster 1, with 121 cases, and the cluster 2. And the cluster 3, that is different behavior, was the second most numerous of the level, with 38 and 17 problems and 47 warnings. And final, very similar to the cluster 4. And finally, the cluster 5 has 29 problems and 168 warnings. But if we analyze the accessibility websites of the countries with more international tourist arrivals, problems, warnings, and not review were significant in the total of the number of issues. Warnings, aquí you can see, represents more than 70% of the total number of the issues for all clusters. Clusters 1 and 2, that is United Kingdom, Australia, and France, have more than 90% of warnings of the total. The opposite is the cluster 7, here with this result that is Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan, with a few warnings that only represent the 25% of the total. The destination with highest flow of tourists did not have the best level of accessibility to their official tourist websites, since they all have a serious problem with the management of warnings. Now, we do a comparative of the worst webs between, this is the results in 2016, and this is the results nowadays in 2021. Are very similar, but they increase a lot because nowadays the webs have less warnings. The same result is for the level of conformance of AAA. For the best websites, the results are very similar. And for this, we have to summarize a few ideas. The vast majority of countries are making a great effort to provide accessible websites, mainly cluster 2 for the level AA and cluster 1 for the level AAA. There are still many that should rethink their strategies regarding accessibility, mainly with the compatibility of assistive technologies, navigability, adaptability, and text alternatives. Improves the test results of 2016-2021, decrease the number of warnings made for the level AA. But we have to continue to work a lot into two important blocks. First, with the navigation of the websites. The users know where they are on the website all the time. Listen to the contents in the audio format. Limit the number of links per page. Provide mechanisms to navigate to different sections of content of web page, and make links visually distinct and highlights search terms. About the compatibility, will be very interested. Pay attention to assistive technologies. Assistive technologies are very important. Try to avoid breaking assistive technologies, circumvent assistive technologies, and display information about standard rules that assistive technologies can recognize and interact with. With all these results and all of this information, now what? Now will be very interesting. We think that three simple ideas. First, organizations linked to disability also have an important role to play, by monitoring and lobbying public bodies to improve their websites. People with disabilities so can develop attitudes that have a large social, family, and health impact, and that facilitates the ability of information and implementation of service in tourism sector. Secondly, it is recommended that designers should not only apply a set of standards, but build on pre-existing experience and develop new, more dynamic knowledge. And finally, people with disability, older people, are becoming more active and want to enjoy their free and leisure time. So travel is their main activity. Therefore, it is essential to obtain the most amount of reliable information to ensure that they have the best experience possible when traveling, and the internet is a ever-growing source of information. This is my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Trinidad, for also a very interesting presentation that which results, I think, also prove the relevance of our action project in a way. And I'm sure I'm seeing in the chat that there is already some questions also for you. So by the end of the session, we will have the opportunity to discuss and to you to answer these questions. So our last, but not of course the least speaker is Maria João Carneiro. Maria João Carneiro will talk about how are we making tourism attractions accessible, building bridges and providing new perspectives. Maria João Carneiro holds a PhD in tourism from our university, the University of Aveiro, and she is an assistant professor in the Department of Economics. It's a very long name, sorry. Department of Economics and
management and industrial engineering and tourism. Yes, it's long.
It's not my department, so I was struggling with the name, but it's a very long name anyway. So she is an assistant professor in the DGET department, and she's vice director of the degree of management and planning in tourism. Also vice director of the doctoral program in marketing and strategy, and researcher at the research unit GovCop, which means governance, competitiveness, and public policies. She also is the author and co-author of several papers published in scientific international journals, of several book chapters and many papers integrated in proceedings of national and international conferences. And she was a member, she is and was a member of the organizing and scientific committees of various international conferences. And she has also participated in several projects in different areas such as sustainable tourism, rural tourism, cultural tourism, and social tourism. And her research interests include competitiveness of tourism destinations, consumer behavior in tourism, cultural tourism, and of course, accessible tourism. So Maria João, thank you very much for sharing with us your research, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. May I share my slides? I think, yes, I'm going to.
Yes.
Sure. Are you now able to see them, my slides?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, it's an honor being here. So thank you for the invitation. It's an honor being here with so much knowledgeable people and great expertise in this field of accessibility and tourism. My presentation would be on how are we making tourism attractions accessible, building bridges and providing new perspectives. I don't want to be exhaustive. I just want to provide some perspectives if I can. Relating to tourism attractions, we know that they are elements that appeal people and encourage them to travel to the destination where the destinations are located. And they are considered very valuable, even when regarding, for example, to cultural tourism attractions. ICOMOS has already considered that cultural heritage can have high aesthetic, historical, social, spiritual, scientific value. Even they can be relevant income generators, but also agents of change. Maybe change of the territory or of the visitors, who knows? I think it depends on how we manage them. They are also important elements for the competitiveness of tourism destinations. And in this regard, we can see the widely known model of competitiveness of Ricci and Crouch, which show us that attractions are the basis of the competitiveness of the destinations. If we want to improve accessibility in attractions, then just consider what is accessible tourism. And according to Darcy and Dixon, this is a kind of tourism whose objective is to enable people with access requirements, including in terms of mobility or vision, hearing, cognitive dimensions, to function independently and with equity and dignity through through the delivery of universally designed tourism products, services, and environments. And the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism already had considered that tourism is one of the best expressions of the sustained growth of free time, and all the people should have right to tourism, and all initiatives that provide widespread access to tourism should be encouraged. But are all people having access to tourism? And during this conference, we have already noticed, and across our life, we have already noticed that, for example, people with special needs are facing a lot of constraints. And I brought here an example of a study undertaken by one master student, Susana Mesquita, which is almost now finishing her PhD in museums and people with disabilities. And she analyzed the accessibility of museums in 4 European capitals: London, Paris, Madrid, and Lisbon, because we know that sometimes when people with special needs face some difficulties, it's because the society, and in this case, the attractions are not accessible, are not appropriate. And so she analyzed this based on observations and on interviews to managers of the museums. She examined the strategies for increasing the accessibility of museum sites. And looking to the total column, we see that the numbers are not very bad regarding some issues. For example, the entrance was visible with no glass doors, and the issues in the majority, in more than 90% of the museums, and the layout inside the museums was not so bad also, but some heterogeneity also exists. For example, in the case of the layout, the display of the places inside the museum, Madrid was not so good. And the numbers become worse when we come to guidance inside the museums. So not only signposting, but also handrails, floor indicators, the numbers become much worse. She also analyzed the accessibility of the objects and of the interpretation, the information provided about the exhibitions. And here also, regarding some issues, is not so bad. For example, concerning some specific aspects of the publication, such as the size of the letters or the good contrast in interpretative panels. But again, the numbers become worse when we come to other aspects, such as other aspects of publications as relief figures, and tactile experiences, audio experiences, even involving audio guides and other multisensory experiences. So this study and many other studies show that there are some weaknesses in some attractions regarding physical and communicational access, and even worse, and this has been mentioned across this conference also, are sometimes the weaknesses regarding regarding attitudes, mainly attitudes from staff towards people with disabilities, such as avoiding communication, using standardized approaches, and not coping with specific needs, and underestimating the abilities of people with special needs. But also these studies show us that there are some best practices, and even when best practices are not noticeable, they also provide some ideas of opportunities that we have. I'm not going to read everything, but we can use, for example, audio guides in infrared versions, so that when people approach objects, for example, in a museum, the audio guide automatically works and provides the information, even if a person didn't notice that he or she has approached an object. We may use assistive technologies for reading texts, tailored approaches to cope with specific needs, multisensory experiences, and of course, appropriate attitudes towards people with disabilities. But even when providing access to tourism attractions, which access are we providing? And here I wanted to invite you to have a broader perspective, not only including people with special needs, but all of us that are potential visitors to tourism attractions, which access has been providing to us. And here I want to make a connection with the last presentation that I found really interesting, with the data being presented in a very interesting way. But thinking about this, when are we beginning to provide access? We are providing access only during the visit, while the people are visiting attractions, or in the pre-visit, because we know that people with special needs require more information about the accessibility of attractions, but also all the other people require information about attractions when they visit, they want to visit them. So just a very brief example of a study done by a master student that analyzed websites of museums in Portugal. So to tell that some of the problems that Trinidad talked about extend to attractions. I'm not going into details, but this student found that 16% of the museums in Portugal do not have a website. In those having a website, more than 500, according to Access Monitor, have an average level of accessibility of 5.8 in a scale of 1, very poor, to 10 excellent web accessibility practices. This is not very bad indeed, and compared to other agents, and we compared to travel agents, to even to means of accommodation, this is better than them. But we think we have here an opportunity to improve, because there is some heterogeneity, and some museums, for example, at levels of accessibility of 2 point something or 3 point something. And she also found 7.5 errors in each website. And even when we have access to the attractions, what is being told about the attractions? What is being revealed about them? Sometimes I have this picture inside my mind that we see like this castle, we only see part of the attraction, and a very large part is still hidden, even behind the wall. And I think that much people want to look behind the wall and see what is there. They want to know more, they want to discover more, and have experiences with more information. So what can we see beyond the wall? Many things. This is the example of the castle of Santa Maria da Feira here in Portugal. And in the right side, we see the example of the medieval journey of Santa Maria da Feira, which is an example of a reenactment event, of a living history event, very well known in Portugal. So, but we can see many things beyond this wall. So what is being told about attractions? What is being told about the people related to these attractions, to the people who live there, to the people that nowadays still carries out activities related to these attractions? What is being told about events related to these attractions, about battles, fights, but also about celebrations? We still are in the same example of the same castle. And now other examples. Which stories, which details are we telling, are we revealing? And this is an example that uses storytelling in some mines in Wales. It's Ronda Heritage Park, where old miners are the guides of guided tours, and they not only show the mines, they are inside mines, as you can see, but they also tell the stories of their life when they worked in the mines. And this triggers a lot of emotions, and it's very interesting. Another example is the exhibition of Feeling Van Gogh in the Van Gogh Museum, where people with disabilities can touch relief paintings of Van Gogh. They can, for example, also touch some brushes similar to the ones used by Van Gogh, and also a maquette of the bedroom of Van Gogh. They can even smell some herbs that are similar to the grass of the countryside that Van Gogh painted, and listen to some texts of Van Gogh. Another example is this one. I don't know if you know this, Monalisa Beyond the Glass of Louvre. It's an activity with virtual reality, where they try to show some details of the painting of Mona Lisa through this technique. So I'm going to try to put the video on. Please let me know where you are able to sing it and to hearing. Can you hear it and see it?
See it, yes. Hearing, yes. I'm not sure. Not hearing, I think.
You are not hearing?
No.
Sorry?
At least I'm not.
Sorry?
Yeah, Trinidad. Okay.
Maybe I have to stop sharing. I'm sorry. And I will share again. I'll try to share my sound. Are you seeing it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Let me know.
Yeah. Now it's okay.
Monalisa Behind the Glass offers visitors to go inside the painting, not only to look at it from outside, but to try to be within the universe of the painting. It's something completely new. It's the first time that we are using virtual reality for an experience for the visitors within the Louvre. It is the most visited museum in the world. We are welcoming roughly 10 million of visitors, which is of course a lot.
Everybody wants to see the painting, but because of the crowd, you have the average of 30 seconds stand in front of the paintings because there are too many people.
It's very important that we are able to address both people who are coming here and people who are not coming here, but who are interested in the Louvre.
They said we need to find a way to get closer to the painting and what Da Vinci wanted to express. And the VR experience sounds to be the best way to do it.
We were really happy to work with HTC and MEC to create this meeting between our curators, experts of Leonardo, and VR experts.
It took us a gigantic amount of work to separate the myth from the truth, and we discovered the techniques that were used.
We wanted to explain the story behind that painting. The composition and the way Da Vinci did it was a revolution at this, because he created a new way of painting people.
Monalisa is both a masterwork, but it's also an image that is very easy to understand. She's a woman, but still she's not a movie star, and she's behaving very properly, so it's quite easy to get along with her.
Bring Monalisa to life was a real challenge because we only know her face.
Should we represent her as a painting? Should we represent her as the living woman?
We had the chance to go to the Louvre and be alone with Mona Lisa. We can really focus our attention on every detail. But we can't really see every detail because you have an old varnish, the glass in front of her, with all the deep scientific analysis they gave us. We have infrared, we have X-ray, we have special reflectography.
One of the most challenging parts was to model the face because her expression is extremely subtle. We worked with a 3D modeler specialist. We did 1,000 back and forth to find the good expression. We had to decide exactly how she was dressed.
So I'm going to stop here. I think we have seen enough. So now I come back to the presentation. So this is an example. I think it's an interesting example. And talking about stories and details, what are sometimes we omitting? Sometimes we cannot omit important things. I read a very interesting study where visitors of a sugar plantation in Caribbean complained because the guides of the guided tour did not talk a lot about slavery, and they knew that slaves were the ones who began this plantation. So they wanted to hear more about this. So these are important examples, but I think we should also consider and explore the temporal perspective of access. So, for example, when are we letting people to visit the attraction? When are we providing more in-depth information about the attraction? For example, in which, regarding guided tours, in which days are we providing guided tours? What is the duration of the guided tours? Another student analyzed the museums of Lisbon and Porto, and she found that almost half of them offered guided tours from half an hour to an hour, and 40% offered guided tours of an hour to an hour and a half. And this is a decision that managers have to make. And with each frequency, are we offering guided tours? In which periods of the day are we letting people to visit the museum and offering guided tours? For example, in Vatican museums and in the Sistine Chapel, they are offering a private night tour, and that has been highly appreciated by visitors because they have the opportunity to experience these attractions in a calmer environment. Another initiative was that is not now available because of the COVID, but was the one offered by Lisbon Oceanarium that was sleeping with sharks. They gave the opportunity of children to go to the oceanarium and sleep there with an adult, of course, but it was an amazing experience for the child. I think we should consider also and explore more the geographical perspective of access. Why not presenting less visited parts of the attractions? Some attractions are doing this and offering, for example, backstage guided tours. This is the case of, for example, the National Theatre in London and of other attractions. For example, the National Theatre is inviting people to, not now because this is not now available because of the COVID also, but was inviting people to come to the backstage to see how the preparation of the shows is made, and even to participate in workshops doing props, adereços, and parts of the scenario of shows. And as they say, these trips are never the same. So other perspectives about the geographical dimension of access, we can also explore the surrounding environment of the attraction. And the literature already says this. For example, Henri Rivière, talking about the pneumatology, talks about the territorial expansion of museums. He argued that museums should not be limited to the space between their walls. And other authors argue that it is relevant that the managers of attractions identify the opportunities they have in the surrounding of these attractions. And this can be done by, for example, exploring the immediate surroundings of the attractions, even sometimes in the territory, in the property of the own attraction. For example, is what is being done by the Serralves Foundation here in Portugal, in Oporto, which not only explores the museum, the building of the museum, but also the gardens that are in the surrounding environment, and they do a lot of events and also conservation workshops there. Other examples are building, exploring, some connections with other buildings and infrastructure in the vicinity of the attractions. So, for example, creating connections with other attractions that are nearby and with the territory as a whole, or even going to schools and presenting part of the attractions and encouraging students to come to the attractions. So one example of creating connections with the territory was that of the tram museum in Oporto that offered some time ago not only the opportunity to see the trains inside the museum, but also offered visitors the opportunity to travel in a tram in some parts of Oporto with an audio guide. this is a way of extending the trips outside the museum, and it is also a way of offering an integrative view of the destination. Sometimes I think we are giving a very narrow access, a very narrow perspective of the attractions, and it was desirable that we expanded and improved access. And why improving this access? I cannot summarize this in few words, but I tried to. In the gray rectangles, we can see reasons more related to the destinations. So improving access to attractions may help to improve the image of the attractions and of the destinations, may help to diversify the supply and increase the competitiveness of the destinations. And looking to the blue rectangles, we see reasons more associated with the visitors, because the main objective is to satisfy the visitors in tourism. So reasons for improving the accessibility of the attractions are also to provide leisure and tourism opportunities that people would not have otherwise, to increase the awareness regarding the significance of heritage, to also offer enriching sensory experiences, to provide opportunities for experiencing a distinct environment, and to trigger emotions. And regarding the opportunity for experiencing a distinct environment, we know that many people search an opportunity for escaping while doing tourism trips and while visiting attractions. And also concerning the generating emotions, I brought here 2 testimonies of people who visited attractions, and I think they talk a little bit about this. So the first example is about the Feeling Van Gogh exhibition that I talked to you about. Someone who visited this exhibition said that I've been able to touch 3 paintings by Van Gogh printed in 3D. As an art lover, this was obviously amazing. More people should experience this. Another example is from the activity of sleeping with sharks in the Lisbon Oceanarium. A child, after participating in this activity, stated the following: I enjoyed falling asleep next to the sharks. When I was asleep and woke up, it felt like I was inside the sea. And I think the words speak for themselves. And as more as I think about this, I think that this of improving the access to attractions is a question of building bridges many times. And building bridges, how? We have the attraction, and we can build a bridge with all aspects of the attractions that visitors cannot capture by themselves. The ones that I already mentioned: people, events, stories, other things, either by showing details, exploring the geographical and temporal dimension of access. We can also build bridges with destinations, either with other attractions and with local community and with the destination as a whole. And in this way, I think we are building bridges also with visitors. So I leave you with one question: which bridges are we willing to build? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria João, for the interesting presentation, and also for the questions you raised here. And I'm sure that we will have now some time to discuss also the ideas you presented here and your perspective. I was looking at the chat. I will ask the participants in the YouTube to place the questions there, and I will try to look at the questions and read it to our presenters. We have already some questions here for all the three presenters. I will start with the first one by Elizabeth Castanholz to Bodil. Elizabeth said, very interesting, Bodil. How about the role of caregivers in the context of travel of persons with dementia? Do you consider also interviewing them, these caregivers persons? I don't know if you want to answer or so you can do it and then we will continue.
Definitely. I think that's a very, very important issue. And I think also we have to take the social turn in tourism studies seriously and look at not the individual, but the group that travels together. However, I would say that the research that has been done on dementia-friendly tourism this far has definitely given more voice to caregivers, than it has to the people with dementia themselves. So of course, what our dream is to also give voice to people with dementia, but we will definitely look at that aspect as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question now for Trinidad, also from Elizabeth Castanholz. She asks, and I was wondering this as well, because you present Portugal there in some slides, but then no much data on Portugal after the first slides with the results. So do you have this data? What can you say about Portugal?
I have the data, but there is a lot of countries and try to summarize. About the Portugal have a very different behaviors. If for the level of conformance AA, the problem is with the problems, okay, mainly with the point 2.4, that is with the navigable of the web. But if we analyze the AAA level of conformance, the problem is with the warnings and with the point 4.1, the compatibility with the assistive technologies and other things. This is the main results of Portugal.
Thank you very much. And also from Elizabeth Castanholz to Maria João, very interesting. Did you find museums initiatives adapted to publics with cognitive limitations, or the studies you mentioned that you are involved in find some?
This that I presented do not have this this kind of activities, and in fact there is very few research on people with cognitive disabilities. So it's something that we have to improve, and for what I've seen in research, and I did not explore a lot in this area, I need to say, there is not much things. In fact, the research that is made is about tourism trips in general, so visiting destinations, and not widely focused on tourism attractions. So it is, we found some with people with disability, more with people with physical impairments or visual impairments, I'm sorry, or with or deaf people, for example, but not with people with cognitive disabilities. As Bodil was saying, this is a field of research that is very unexplored, and related to attractions, to museums, for example, but with other attractions, it's very, very much underexplored. So I think this is a good idea for doing some research in the future. It's a challenge.
Yes, by sure, and these the people with the cognitive impairments are also some in the presentation of Bodil. She said that dementia is a hidden disability, and also this cognitive impairment, maybe not so hidden disability, but it's not so much looked over when we talk about accessible tourism and when we talk about accessibility in tourism attractions. So it's, I think it's definitely a subject to be further researched. I'm looking here in the chat of the YouTube channel.
But let me just say something about this, Elizabeth. It's very challenging because I've been searching for research about people with cognitive disabilities, not really related to museum, but and Bodil, it's more it's wide expert on this. The kind of strategies that people have to find to deal with all the challenges, and mainly the caregivers have to find sometimes some interesting strategies of letting people more familiar with the environment and so on. So I think we can learn a lot with this kind of research, and then bring this kind of findings and this kind of conclusions to museums and other attractions. So I found some of these strategies, even though they are not really related in this case to museums.
Yeah, there is here more recent question in the chat from Maggie Mar. And she asked also, I think, for all of you, what are the managers' willingness to adapt or to adjust to people with disability or special needs? I think that Maggie is Margarida. She's asking the managers of the tourism attractions and tourism, even tourism lodgements, etc. So I think for all of you, the three of you, so what do you think about this? Are managers willing to adapt to the needs of the special needs of people with different disabilities? I think all the three of you touch in this. So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe
I could. Yep. Because I would say that that's one of the problems with doing research, because if you ask managers if they will cater to the needs of people with disabilities, they will say yes, both because it's the political correct answer and because legislation also in many countries say that you have to. But I would say that there's a different layer to it, because even though they say, of course we will, it is a matter of setting aside resources. And actually, I also had some students who did some work that has not been published, where managers, especially in restaurants and hotels, said that catering to the needs of people with cognitive disabilities would perhaps affect their other customers negatively. So it was not because the managers didn't want to do it, because of course they wanted to do it, but they would have to take into consideration the needs of their other customers. And if you, for example, in a restaurant cater to the needs of people who might have different kinds of table manners, then it was not that they did not want to do it, but their customers who were there for a romantic dinner or candlelight dinner would not be appreciative of that effort. So I think we need to take into consideration that we will get some very political correct answers when we talk to the industry.
Thank you. Trinidad?
I am agree with Bodil. I think that we have very hard work to change the names. This is the first step. And the second, that we have this problem in Spain. We have a lot of laws about disability, about architectonical disability laws, but the problem is that the vast majority are focused on physical disability. To me, the most important is speak with a specialist about accessibility, not only the laws. The ideal will be speak with a specialist, with people with disabilities, because they know that they need, no allow, and try to make things in the correct way. Okay, not only for put something that is accessible, no. And the last to me is try to work in all types of disability. Disability is okay, it's not a homogeneous group, but it's all, okay? Because the normalists forget always the people with hearing disability, people with cognitive disabilities. Only physical is important. And this is the three things I believe.
Thank you very much. Maria João, do you want to?
I agree with what was said, of course. I think that people are focusing on laws, and we also saw this, that sometimes the main reason for people to comply with some requirements, let's say, it's to apply the law, and this is not enough, really. But I agree that much efforts have been done. When it comes to tourism attractions, much has to be done. But I think also that there is an hope, because we have a good example, good best practices, even if much of the time the physical access is the focus for many ones. We have improved in this kind of strategies, and we have interesting communicational approaches, and even regarding attitudes, we are changing minds, even that slowly. So we have to begin this way.
So we are on the way, but slowly for now. So I have here another question to Bodil from Eugenia Deville. And before, I have to say that everyone in the YouTube channel chat, they are congratulating all the presenters for the very interesting presentation. They are applauding your presentations. And Eugenia asks Bodil, do you consider to study the therapeutic benefits resulting from tourism practices to people with dementia? So what are the benefits from tourism to people with dementia?
Yeah, I would love to. I think, of course, establishing a causality and measuring would be extremely hard, and I'm definitely not the expert on that. We have worked with some colleagues in health previously, and I can see what they can do, and tourism researchers can do less, is that they can measure things. But of course, it's extremely difficult to measure it. However, we need to somehow approach that topic, because that idea about that it is healthy to travel with dementia And because there's this disorientation and the difficulties and the anxiety of navigating in unfamiliar spaces and places, we need to look into it somehow. And I have no idea how we're going to do it. I was thinking I do have some colleagues who are experts on co-design. And that could be very, very interesting if it was possible to go into co-design, just to remember, as Trinidad also said, that we are not developing disabilities-friendly tourism for people, but we should preferably do it with them, because they are the ones knowing what is needed. So that idea about just following the law or just thinking that this is what they might need, I think we need to take that thing about engaging experts, and especially the direct experts, which will be the people that experience disabilities, into this work would be definitely needed, but probably that will be stage 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 of our research.
Yes. I would like to say to people in the chat that if you prefer, you can try to put your questions in Portuguese, and I will do my best to translate the questions. I also have some questions. I will start with a question to Bodil, that you said something that I think is very important for us researchers. When we are doing research, that we are in a way affecting people, all the people, not only people with disabilities or people with dementia, but especially with these people with dementia or with other type of disability or problem or health issue. Do you think do you think that the interviews or the questionnaire, the interviews are the adequate mean to understand the needs of these people, for instance, or have you consider to do other type of use other type of research technique, or because it is true that we have an impact also on the people we are interviewing, we are interacting with. So I find it very interesting, because normally we don't say much about this type of methodological question, but it is an important methodological question. So I don't know, have you considered? Yeah.
And at the moment, I'm definitely heavy into the riddle of methodologies. I think we did those go-alongs, and they certainly had lots of advantages, of course also disadvantages. All research methods have that. But I think one of the things that became very obvious to us was also how ignorant we often are as researchers when we sit there and we do a traditional interview and ask people things, because we don't understand their context, we don't understand their lived lives. So just with the go-alongs, I remember one of them, I did it with 2 women. One was a very fit 80-year-old woman, the other one was a smoker in her 70s. And they had talked a bit about, before we went out, about the difference in pace, but all of a sudden their bodily, what they could do with their bodies became very obvious as I was stuck in the middle while one was walking very fast and the smoker halted and took breaks. So all of a sudden that understanding of physical ability became very visible. So I think we also, I mean, if we want to do research with others and not for others, we need to start using all of those methods that can get us closer to their lives. I have no idea how we're going to do it, but we'll definitely try.
Yes, well, I think that nowadays we have much more research using this type of not just observation of the dynamics of the people, but also other types of techniques like research action or something like that, that we can be in the everyday life of the people observing. But anyway, we are also intruding, we are also affecting in a way what we are observing. So this is an important question, I think. And also, well, it's more or less, it's not completely related with this, but to Maria João. It's very interesting that I think that the museums are making this effort to make people to interact more with the pieces of art, with the works of art. And this is especially important to people with some kind of disability that they cannot see, they cannot interact as the rest of the people with this. But when others, when someone in the museum, a technician or an expert in these things, are telling a story about a painting or about a sculpture or whatever, and they are putting, I was thinking that this story is not the story of the person that are seeing the work of art, but it is still the story of the technician, of the person that are telling the story. So, of course, I don't know what you think about this, but the way we tell a story, we can create certain types of emotions. So it is also not, it is not objective. It is not an objective story. So what do you think about this telling a story about a painting, creating a certain emotion? Do you think this can be a problem or not? Or
I think we should take care when doing this, of course, because as you mentioned, and very well, when people are telling stories, they are creating an imaginarium in the mind of the visitors, and they are influencing them. So we have to take care with a kind of stories. Obviously, in storytelling, one of the most important things is authenticity. People want to hear authentic stories, and we have to take several types of care with these kind of stories. I think sometimes they can be a good tool if we do not provide information that is not true. But of course, we have to take care. I don't think this should be the majority of the presentation, the stories, and there is a lot of discussion here regarding what you said between constructivist approaches and more positivist approaches, or let's say, in other words, the approaches that are more guided, in which the guides really provides all the information, guide people by a certain way, so not in a not very flexible way. But there are the ones who defend, and very well too, to have a more constructivist approach in the guided tours, in which they begin the tour by trying to understand the interests of people, and so they are going to present information according to the interests of people, and will try to let people to discover the attraction, of course, giving some kind of information, but much more people discovering the attractions by themselves. And this is a very interesting way also that I think can be adopted in some situations. Of course, it is more challenging because the guides have to be have to have more training. It's not so easy then to make a visit that is not so flexible and that is more standardized, let's say. So I think the two approaches are useful, are interesting. So it also depends on the audience, on the guide, if we are talking about a guided tour, and stories are interesting, but we have to take care with some issues.
Thank you. And also I have a question, not a question, but maybe I was thinking about this aspect. What about, because you were talking about the accessibility of the websites and etc. But what about this digital illiteracy? Because maybe also people with disabilities and senior people are more digital illiterate than the rest of the population. I'm not sure. So what do you think that technology can do, or what can be done about this digital illiteracy of these segments of the population? Because they can use cannot use the websites if they don't know how to access. So have you thought about this question or not? Is this a question or not?
No, it's a very important question. The result shows that, okay, we analyze the websites, but we analyze other type of digital media and have more problems than websites, because the structure of the website, the programmation is easier than other systems. But now we are focusing in other very important thing, that is the content about accessibility. Because one of the problems that people tell us is, okay, I want that my website will be accessible, but then I don't have information about accessibility. And it's like, okay, the results of the websites analyzed this year improved a lot. Now the websites, the major part, has a very good level. And the problem now is the content about accessibility. And the difference, we are researching now about this, and the difference is very big. And there are only a few countries that are working in the correct way. A few, I think that I can count with my two hands, no more. And this is the way. But we want to start to a new research line with the network, with Facebook, with Twitter, and other types, because okay, the seniors no use a lot, but the people with disability that is less of 30 years use a lot. But we don't have time to research all these things.
Yeah, it's true. But I was wondering, because, okay, one thing is to have accessible websites, but if people cannot access because of their previous conditions, or so I was thinking that maybe this was also a thing to consider.
Now there are a new incredible systems in Valencia. There are an institute that work a lot to adapt all the technologies to all the difference. And then the Spanish government are improved a lot of money for the education to adapt the different technology system for people with disability. For this reason, in Spain is easier, can access if you have a problem, you have a visual screens, you have a lot of different things. But this is impossible to research, because each type of disability have a very specific technology solution.
Yeah, it's true. So we don't have more questions in the chat, I think. I have to close the session, and I would like to thank to Bodil, to Trinidad, and to Maria João for the wonderful presentations, for the wonderful ideas you shared with us that make people to ask so many questions and to have some also to go out of the session and still think about what has been said here, because this is a very important topic for all the reasons you have said. And thank you very much. And I hope that next time we can meet in person in another conference, perhaps, or in another context. And thank you very much to the three of you, and also thank you very much to all the participants in the chat and in the people that were watching us through the YouTube channel of the University of Aveiro. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.